Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, in season preview 2 out of 32, I was joined by Bears fans Luke Campbell as we preview the 2025 Chicago Bears season. Luke gives his thoughts on the Bears off-season.
As a Bears fan, I feel like I'm obligated as part of my contract to say that we won the off-season no matter what we did. But this time, I think we did.
And it becomes obvious which team he thinks will finish bottom of the NFC North. We'll leave my talk first, a little bit more of a surprise. And Luke predicts the outcome of every Bears game this season and comes out with an overall record prediction for the season. Hope you guys enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast for Team 2 out of 32 in our 2025 season previews. And this time the team is the Chicago Bears. And with me, I've got a returning guest with me today. It's Luke Campbell. Luke, how are you? How are things?
Hey man, I'm doing good. Yeah, how are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, all good. Can't really complain. It's been probably the best summer we've had since COVID. Don't know whether the same for you in Scotland, but certainly in Wales and what I've been told England as well. It's just been so warm every day, and it's a shame I've been in work for most of that. But it's I can't complain with the weather.
It's pretty scorching here. I think it's going to be a heat wave again this weekend. So if you're listening to this and you're melting, sorry, not my fault though. Sorry.
Well, we're actually recording this podcast a few weeks early. So this actually been recorded on Wednesday, July the 9th, but it will be scheduled to come out on July the 21st, which is of the day you're listening to today, potentially. So it may not be actually nice weather at this point. In case you're wondering why we're saying it's nice weather, then it's actually pouring down with thunder. That is why. And also we may miss some breaking news involving a trade. Maybe the Eagles or Packers are traded for Caleb Williams in the last 2 weeks, and maybe there's been some breaking Bears news we don't know about. So if we miss out on certain transfers, certain trades, certain additions, then that is why essentially. But we are here to talk all things Chicago Bears, and let's head on to the ins and outs of the Bears off season. So in terms of the ins. This includes the likes of Durham Smythe, Grady Jarrett, Travis Homer, Olamide Zacchaeus, Devin Duvernay, Jonah Jackson, and also Joe Tooney, both of those players via a trade. And the main outs include DeAndre Carter, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, DeMarcus Walker, Darrington Evans, and Tevin Jenkins. And you drafted 8 players in the 2025 NFL draft, and the first 4 taken, I should say, are Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan, 10th overall, wide receiver out of Missouri, Luther Burden, 3rd, 39th overall, Ozzie Trapilo, defensive tackle out of Boston College, 56th overall, and also 62nd was Shamir Turner, defensive tackle taken out of Texas A&M. Now, Luke, you overall, your thoughts on the overall off-season additions to your team?
Well, yet again, I feel like we won the off-season. That's all I'm going to say. As a Bears fan, I feel like I'm obligated as part of my contract to say that we won the off-season no matter what we did. But this time, I think we did. I think we made a lot of really good moves, especially along the offensive line. I thought that the moves along the offensive line were really long overdue, but really, really good signings. I think... You've got to really give them a lot of credit for the players that they brought in, and the difference that they made. My only question mark in terms of free agency was possibly overpaying for Grady Jarrett, because I think he's on the wrong side of 30 for the kind of role that he does. But I think he'll be a great presence in that locker room. So I think that, and he can still do a very good job actually. But I possibly paid a little bit more than we should have done in terms of salary and stuff like that. But I think across the board, you've got to think that it's an upgrade pretty much across the board in terms of the players you've brought in. And I think that, we'll talk about the draft in a second or two, but I was really happy with the draft. I think the draft could have went as well as we possibly could have asked for on that side of things. I do have a little bit of concern that defensively we didn't take an edge rusher as such. You know, a real proper edge rusher, because we had a lot of problems generating pressure on the edge last year, and I'm a little bit concerned that we'll still have that issue. You know, even with and I can't even pronounce his name, but I'll try it. Ode Yingbo. You know, I think he's a bit of a sleeper, but I don't know if he's necessarily the finished article. So we'll just need to see how that pans out. But I am a little bit concerned about that. But by and large, I'm pretty bullish, actually. I feel like there's a lot of good additions there. I feel like the draft picks are guys that can contribute early. And you don't often say that about draft picks, but I do really feel that. And especially given that you know, the head coach likes to run a lot of 12 formation and stuff. I think getting Loveland was a really, you know, really brainy and clever choice, to be honest. So I thought it really worked out well. So yeah, overall, very, very happy.
Yeah, are we surprised by the addition of Colton Loveland? Because, you know, you got someone like Cole Kmet, who, you know, had over 700 yards in 2023, 6 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in 2024, almost 500 yards there. You think about, you mentioned one of defensive talent, and the likes of Mikael Williams was taken next. Kenneth Grant, the Dolphins at 13. Although I question his personality. Shamir Stewart at 17 was taken. So we surprised in a way that, you know, with a guy that has had some success as a Bears tight end in Cole Kmet, were you surprised they went for tight end that early? Or are you happy that the fact that you mentioned the 12 personnel and having those 2 tight end sets? Yeah, what was your take when you took a tight end that early in the draft as well?
Well, I felt like they were making the head coach a happy man. I think that was the, you know, because they could have taken an edge rusher, and as you say, there was a couple of, you know, really good defensive players round about there that would have really helped the defensive side of things. But I mean, I think Loveland kind of complements Kmet in a lot of ways. He's obviously a really good talent. I mean, you know, I think it was between him and the other guy who I've forgotten his name, Warren, wasn't it? And he was great as well. But I'm really happy. I think everything I've seen of Loveland, he looks great. He looks like the kind of guy that you know you would want on your team. And I think given the variety of looks and stuff that Johnson likes to do, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer to get him actually in a lot of ways, because it gives him so many options. So I was pretty pleased actually with it. I mean, it could have went a lot of other ways. But the context, of course, is that I would be pleased with anyone in the first round, if I'm honest. You know, anyone that makes the team better, I'm going to be happy with, really. And that should be the metric for every single fan of football. If it makes your team better, you should be happy. And you know, I don't think you can argue with that.
Absolutely. I mean, when we had that brief day of, as a Dolphins fan, not having a tight end really to go for after the Johnny Smith trade, I was one of the guys. I did actually start writing an article on tight end target to the Dolphins, which obviously was scrapped because the news came out of Darren Waller. But I was thinking about Cole Kmet, and I thought he could have been a great, you know, addition. And I think that, yeah, I mean, there's not, you know, I don't think the wide receiver room is brilliant. Although I love the tape I watch of Lee Burden. Now I'm not a draft expert, so I only watch really highlights on YouTube, but he looks a great little player, and I think he could be a great addition. I think, you know, there aren't too many great wide receiver options at Chicago, and I think having those 2 tight ends will make a lot of difference, I think. And I'm surprised more teams don't go down the route of using 2 tight ends, because we saw it work with the Patriots, albeit the Patriots are the Patriots, or were the Patriots back then. And I want to shout out Ollie Butler-Henderson, who made this point to me before about just how, you know, a lot of tight ends, you know, a lot of times are, you know, naturally bigger than a wide receiver, and I think they can obviously, if they got the speed as well, I think it could be a great matchup against some linebackers. So I'm surprised, you know, more teams don't do it, but at the same time, I can see why they don't. But you alluded to a major in, which wasn't a player at the Bears. It was Ben Johnson, which is our first talk of the episode.
Yes.
Ben Johnson had a brilliant time with the Lions. 15-2 record last year as the OC. Year before that, made the NFC Championship game. Probably should have won that NFC Championship game, if we're honest here. And it's been an amazing run he had with the Lions. But we have seen a lot of defensive coordinators not succeed, make the jump up. The obvious one we always think about is Adam Gase. And there's been other players, other coaches like Matt Nagy had a great time with the Chiefs both before and after, but with yourself, he didn't do too well. And there's been many others, and that is my concern with Aaron Glenn. But at the same time, we've had plenty of OCs that have gone and done great jobs. Sean McVay is a classic example of that.
Yes.
A coordinator going on and doing well. And Ben Johnson is someone who, was very highly touted, and from all intents and purposes, from all accounts I've heard, it sounds like the Bears were a team you wanted from the start. How are you feeling about the hire? Because on paper, it's a great addition, but at the same time, we have seen plenty of OCs and DCs have this hype. Brandon Staley being one, and it not, work out. Cliff Kingsbury at the Cardinals. Are you feeling like it's a good appointment, a good jump up? Can he make the jump up, or do you think he'll be another victim of exciting coordinator not doing as well as we all hope?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, taking someone who, is arguably the most hyped offensive coordinator of recent times, it is always going to be a bit of a risk. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. From what I've seen of him, though, I do feel like he's got the right sort of gravitas, and you can see that he's very well respected. I'm very optimistic about him, actually. I think that I was really, really, really happy when we got him. And that, was a really good sign of the, I think every Bears fan was probably thinking the same way. I do feel like he will make that step up. I think he's been significantly backed by his GM, considerably, and a lot more than previous Bears coaches. And that augurs well for how he's going to do, I think. And if you look at the sort of investment that they put in behind him and Caleb, you've got to think that they really, really, really believe in him. And the other thing, of course, is that the first couple of draft picks are offensive players, and good offensive players at that. And again, that is a statement of intent in terms of backing an offensive-minded coach. So I actually think he'll be a real success. I think he'll shake things up a bit. I genuinely think he's going to be the best thing for Caleb Williams. And I think what you'll see is Caleb Williams kind of, reaching his potential with him. And I think he will be a success.
Well, for those who are watching on YouTube, apologies. You may have seen me going a bit berserk behind camera here. I have got in the background the Wales World Cup game in the Women's World Cup, and Wales have just scored their first goal ever in the World Cup. So that's why, if you were watching on YouTube this video, after why I went a bit crazy on the video. But yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, I think, for me personally, if you've got a young quarterback, whether it's a rookie or sophomore quarterback, and you go out and get multiple offensive linemen, and Joe Tooney especially is someone that is one of the more experienced, 5 Super Bowl rings, or was it 4? He's won so many. He's been part of the Patriots dynasty, the Chiefs dynasty, an experienced guys. And for those who did watch the channel over the Super Bowl era, I got to interview him, and he was such a great guy, and you can just tell he just oozes that leadership kind of thing. And having him, getting Jonah Jackson as well, I mean, you can't ask for more as a Bears fan. And as a quarterback, I mean, Caleb Williams had 73 sacks in 2024, the most sacked quarterback in the league, and the 3rd most sacked quarterback in any single season in NFL history. So, there was a clear target there to aim for in the offseason, and a lot of teams are guilty of not addressing it. I think the Bengals are going to be one team that's done that. They've not really addressed their defensive issues. The Dolphins certainly haven't addressed their issues at offensive line, and have done for years. And Bears for years haven't addressed their issues. But you can tell with the new sort of the GM and now a new head coach, it just seems to be, they're doing all the right things. Of course, we all know what happened last year, all the additions, and the classic phrase I kept using was, no rookie quarterbacks being in the better situation. And obviously the one thing they forgot to do was get offensive linemen. So they've gone out and got that. And I think, I think this will lead to my other point in a minute, but I do think that they are sadly, in a tough division. I think that's going to ultimately be their biggest biggest sort of stumbling block and biggest issue, biggest test. But I think you think about that Bears team, if you put them in a AFC South, NFC South, maybe even at a stretch, maybe in NFC West. But you put them in these divisions and they get a lot more wins, I think, because of maybe easier opponents, especially the two South divisions. But I think for the Bears, I as someone who's a self-proclaimed soft spot Bears fan, I've always had a soft spot for the team. It's always good to see them addressing their needs and doing what they do. And obviously, no one wins Super Bowls off winning an off season, but I think certainly the signs are there that the GM and head coach are trying to move this team in the right direction.
Definitely. I mean, listen, you're preaching to the converted here. I mean, I think like anything else, you've just got to look at the overall upgrade in personnel. And I think, like I say, across the offensive line, you've got leaders all the way there. You've got to think that it's going to be much, much better than last year. I do agree with you. I think the NFC North is going to be pretty much a powerhouse division. I actually have a theory that there might be 3 teams in the playoffs this year. And I hope the Packers finish last because they suck. I'm going to say they suck. Just to appease all the Bears fans, but I really believe that as well, actually. I think no, I think it could be really interesting. I do agree with you. I think the division makes it harder, but not impossible.
No, I think you're right. I think there's always the case in the NFL where you get a lot of teams who finish 4th in the division end up finishing 1st, and vice versa. A lot of that is down to the schedule and how it's done in terms of you get the 4th place team from that division. They pick for each year. So the schedule is meant to be on paper easier for a team to finish last and first, but obviously these things don't always happen. But I think that really leads to my second point about that division, because that division is extremely tough. I mean, I think about the Packers last year making the playoffs. You think about the Lions had a 15-2 record, should have really gone on and won that at least made the NFC Championship game. The Vikings were very good and they crumbled towards the end, but they had the unwanted record of being the first team ever to win 14 games and not win their division. And I do feel like JJ McCarthy is going to be really good for them this year. So I think it's tough. And you got some good coaching there. You've got Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, obviously Ben Johnson come in. Dan Campbell's done a great job in Detroit. It's a tough division. It's a blood-nosed division. It's tough, and it's definitely, as a neutral, my favourite division to watch, I think, for the history of the sport. But it's going to be tough, and I think that is really what I want to ask you about is how do they overcome this, because it is so hard, and you got some tough places to go. In Lambeau Field is notoriously hard to go to. The Bears, finally got that win, but they didn't win there for years. I think since 2016 they didn't win at Lambeau Field, and the Vikings have got an amazing defense. Brian Flores is blitz heavy defensive teams, caused problems for a lot of teams back when he was the head coach of the Dolphins. It's now been the Vikings DC. Justin Jefferson there, one the best receiver in the league. You think about the Packers are really well coached by Matt LaFleur. I think Jordan Love had a bit of a downturn second year, but I think he's going to be brilliant once again. Good young receiving core there. So, it's an awfully tough prospect, isn't it?
It is, but on the flip side, and playing the devil's advocate here, McCarthy could be a bust. The Lions have lost a lot of their coordinator and staff, so they're building afresh. So although they still have the same head coach, they've had to hire a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator and stuff like that. So they could be having early teething problems. And the Packers have their own problems. Everyone says that they have a stacked roster, but the reality is that they're not that good in terms of wide receiver depth when you look at it. There's no bona fide superstar in amongst their ranks at wide receiver, you would say. So, that's the flip side of things. And so it potentially could go the other way, where the Bears start hot and other people have teething problems. I mean, McCarthy hasn't played a competitive game, and although yes, he spent a year behind learning the game and stuff, but that's no substitute for actually playing. And he could have a few rough games to start with. So and then if you're a few games behind, then anything can happen. The same with the Lions; they could have a rocky start. You just don't know. So there is the kind of devil's advocate side of it that says, well, actually, we are more set up for success than the rest of them on that side. So, I think that is an interesting counter to that argument. I do think it's strong. I think McCarthy is a good QB, and I think he probably will come good, but I still think he'll have difficulties too. So it's not a slam dunk for the Vikes to win the division, not by a long shot. And the Lions, as I say, it really just depends on how they work with that continuity issue from that side of things. Because although the players, by and large, are kind of the same, the coaching staff difference, it could have an impact, and nobody knows what kind of impact that'll be. So I think that's my kind of flip side argument. I think it'll be tough, but it's doable. But I think the Bears need to start strong. That's key in all of this. If we can start strong and keep the momentum going, then that puts us in a better place. And like you said, we won at Lambeau, and we did it the hard way too, and that was with a terrible offensive line. So think what we can do this year with a decent offensive line, and we keep them keep them healthy. Whew, the mind boggles.
Now, I'm sorry to say this, Luke. I really am sorry to burst your bubble. If I'm right in my memory's right in saying this, the Packers are playing their backups in that game because they're resting for the playoffs. If I'm right, I think that's what happened. So I always like to put a bit of an asterisk on that Bears win, because I think the Packers, they played Love for the first quarter, and then they
won
back up. So yeah, you've got to think what you can get, especially with your record there. But yeah, I don't like to put too much emphasis on that win. But I think that the losing the coordinators it can go one of two ways. On the one hand, you've seen a lot of teams lose coordinators and they struggled. I mean, the Niners defense struggled massively for a little bit when Campbell left and D'Amico Ryans left a year after as well. It got sort of gradually stayed like that with D'Amico Ryans. I think after he left, it went downhill a little bit. But on the other hand, the Eagles lost coordinators and they won a Super Bowl 2 years later. So, the Lions could go one or two ways. And, it is a tough one to call. You can make a legit case for all 4 teams winning that division. And, Luke is going to be coming on again for our annual season predictions episode. So you'll get our full predictions on there. Now, anyone who's just heard what Luke said and has heard our previous season previews over the years, you'll know exactly where the Packers will finish in his 1-4. But we'll leave my 4 to first, a little bit more of a surprise. Right. Let's head on. What was that? I missed what you said then. What did you say?
It may not be a shock to find out where I rank the Packers. May not be a shock entirely. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the easiest ones to predict out of the whole video. I think that and like Steve saying the Dolphins will do badly will be the sort of the main two lots of the episode.
Yeah.
So let's head on to our 2025 edition of the win-loss tie section. So for those of you who don't know the format, every fan who comes on will go through each game in the season and they'll answer each game with a win, loss, or tie section. Now, win, loss, tie prediction. Now, last season, Bears finished 5-12. Now, Luke, can you remember what you predicted 12 months ago for your team?
Didn't I predict something like 8-9 or 9-8 or something? I think it might be 9-8. Actually, I think I might have been optimistic.
10-6.
Wow. I was obviously drinking a lot of coffee that day. That's all I can tell you.
You were there in your Caleb Williams jersey, all excited for the season, only for it to get blown away within the first 5 weeks. Well, you say that game in London that we met up for. I think you won. I think you won 4 in a row. I think you went. I want to say you went 4-2 at one in that point during the season. I think that win. 4-2.
Yeah, we were in a good place. And see, if you look at the losses that we had last year, they were bloody ridiculous. I mean, honestly, the most ridiculous losses I've ever seen in my entire life. That one in Thanksgiving, I still can't believe that actually happened. And there was a whole series of stupid calls and stupid ways to lose games. And that was like 4 games that we should have actually won. Technically, strictly speaking, 3 at least, maybe 4 that we should have won and didn't. So when you think about it, it wasn't that far off the mark, actually. If it hadn't been for those absolutely boneheaded calls, we would have been closer to where I called it, if I'm honest with you. So that, kind of gives you a bit of optimism. I wasn't maybe that far off the mark if it wasn't for just complete boneheads. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. On the one hand, I do feel like, there's that old phrase where you go, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle, sort of thing. It's a lot of ifs and buts, but that Bears win. I mean, that Bears win against Jags, and then that was in week 6. You didn't win until the final game of the season against the Packers, which really, really probably is a loss. It's just that there's the asterisk behind that win. But you think about the bye week came in, probably stunted a little bit of the of the momentum. But you think about week 8 against Commanders, that was the Hail Mary play. You think about we had a few losses here and there, like 29-9 to the Cardinals, 19-3 to the Patriots. But then you had the Packers lost with that blocked kick at the end, lost 20-19. The week 12, you had an overtime loss to the Vikings. That could have easily been a win there. You think about the Lions only lost by 3 points on Thanksgiving, and there was that horrendous
should have won it
issue at the end. You could at least take it to overtime. And there are you lost. Always forget this one. You lost by 6 points to 3 to the Seahawks in week 17. So really, that could have easily gone the way of being 7 wins. But even then, being a bit closer towards your record prediction. But new season, new hope for the Bears. Now, our first game is going to be against the Minnesota Vikings, and that is, I believe, if I'm right in saying this, it's on Monday Night Football. If I'm right in saying this, I could be wrong. It's saying it's at 7:15 p.m. Eastern on September the 8th, and September the 8th is, if my calendar is correct, that is a Monday. Yeah, so that's going to be Monday Night Football.
Yeah, for sure.
Bears against Vikings at Soldier Field. Lee, for this one, win, loss, or tie?
It's going to be a win. It's the best time to play the new QB, and we're going to smother them, and we're going to win.
Then week 2 is a game against the Detroit Lions at Ford Field. Win, loss, or tie?
I'm going to be super optimistic and say we win that one too. I'm going to be super, super optimistic. Come on, let's do this. Come on.
Okay, so week 3 is once again a home game, but this time you are facing the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, now that actually could be quite tough. I'm going to go win again, just because I'm feeling optimistic tonight, and I want to see if I can do better than my 10-6 prediction from last year.
So week 4 is a road game, and you're traveling to Las Vegas. Cue the Elvis Presley, Viva Las Vegas. Win, loss, or tie?
Mercy, that's a win for us. Mercy.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
That was sure. There you go.
You know what? We're going off topic here. Going to the NFL London games. Hopefully this year. Hopefully in media. And when I'm at one of the London games, I'm actually going to be going to a thing called Elvis Evolution, which is in London, which is basically like Ava Voyage for Elvis, which I'm looking forward to that. So it's going to be a weekend of hopefully either Rams or Jags practice on the Friday, Saturday, maybe in the morning there's something going on. Later on that day, watching this Elvis Evolution, and then Sunday, Rams against Jags. So all round could be a good weekend. Hopefully this year we'll be seeing you again in London. You, Steve, and Chris. Now I'm guessing due to the allegiances of Chris, the Broncos game is what you'll pick, but I don't know what your plans are yet in terms of that. Is that the plan? The Broncos?
Yeah. So we're hoping to. Well, we've got tickets for the Bronco games, so we're looking forward to that. And I think Chris is super excited about it actually, so it should be good. And obviously, I'll be a Broncos fan for the day. I think that's what I feel.
So week 5 is a very early bye week. So week 6 is a game return of the Hail Mary, a chance to stake revenge on the Washington Commanders in Washington.
Do you know what? I think we might lose that. Because I think they're going to be quite good this year. So I think we lose that. I think that's a tough game.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's the same thing with playoff buys. I think regular season buys, it can go one or two ways. I think the Bears proved it last year that you can have a really good run, and the bye week can sometimes halt your momentum, sometimes, but other times it can be just what a team needs. More so if it's maybe down the stretch, like a week 13 bye, I think it can get you right for the sort of run to the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think anyone wants a week 5 bye, if I'm honest. I think that's one of the worst times to get a bye week. But yeah, no, I think certainly I can see that. On the one hand, you'll probably think, oh, it's going to be a fresh week. They're going to be fresh, but other times, you need that week to get back in the groove. So yeah, I can see that. And also, it's a good team as well. It's a good team, the Commanders. We've got to play them in Madrid, I believe, literally 4 weeks after this, maybe 5 weeks after this. So hopefully they'll be striking at that point. Hopefully this game, if you beat them, if you did beat them rather than lose to them, then you'd maybe help them be bad or certainly ruin their confidence when it comes to playing us. But I'm not expecting much from that game, but you never know. Week 7, you're back in Chicago as you're taking on the New Orleans Saints at Soldier Field.
That's a win for us. Easy peasy.
That's going to be one of the easiest ones to predict, I think, this season. Now, going from one of the easier to one of the harder ones, you're traveling in week 8 to Baltimore, M&T Bank Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens.
We lose that. I just can't see us winning that one on the road, to be honest. Much as I'd love to, nah. Yeah,
it's one of the toughest prospects is facing the Ravens in the regular season in Baltimore. I think it's, if you're not doing a week 18 game against them where they're maybe resting players, certainly middle of the season, they're going to be very hot. Now, talking of getting hot, now the Bengals, you're facing them in week 9 on the road. Now, they've sort of got a trend of starting off cold and getting hot. So week 9 could be one or the other. It could be they're still playing badly. It could be they're just getting hot, or it could be that they're playing amazingly. So hard one to call in week 9 at Cincinnati, at Pikel Stadium. Luke, win, loss, or tie?
Now, I actually think this will be a very close game. And the reason I think it will be close is Cincinnati haven't done enough work on their defense this year. And I think their defense was a problem again last year as well, but their offense is so good. I think we lose to them potentially in overtime, actually, because I think they have so many weapons in offense, it's going to be hard to stop them. But the defense is definitely suspect. So, that's the flip side of it. So it could be, I think it'll be a loss, but I think it could be an overtime loss.
Do you know what the Bengals remind me of? We are going back to a different sport here, but do you remember Liverpool's 2013-14 season when you had the amazing Suarez and Sturridge and Sterling attacking trio, Gerrard there, but you had Simon Mignolet in goal, you had Dejan Lovren in the back four, you had Amadou Sakho, you had Ali Sissoko at times, and even you think about the early Klopp days with you had Mane, Salah, Firmino, Coutinho, and then you had Albert Moreno, Mignolet, Nathaniel Klein, Dejan Lovren catching straight in this video. It just feels like that. I mean, they're going to have to, like Liverpool did, they're going to have to win games by scoring 5 to win games. It's going to be exciting. I think as a neutral to watch the Bengals is going to be great to watch, especially again in those division games against the Ravens, or maybe when they face the Bills. We covered that in the last episode. 2 great offenses. I think they're going to be great to watch. But I don't think this is a team that's going to go far. Maybe something might change, but the whole Trey Henderson situation, that's not being sorted yet. Shamir Stewart, who was only drafted a few months ago, he's holding out for a contract, and it could be a really, really. They could literally end the season first in offense and last in defense. I really do think that could be the case.
I think it could be, yeah, for sure, almost certainly.
So then week 10, we are going back to Soldier Field for your first game at home since week 7 and only your second since week 3, taking on the New York Giants.
That's a win for us. That's a win.
Yeah,
No, it's a potential trap game, though. That's the one thing I will say. Where you have a game where you think you're a nailed on certainty and then you get beat by being stupid or whatever. That's a trap game right there. But I still think we win it, but it's got trap game written all over it, so it has.
I agree. I mean, you got Abdul Carter there, one of the best players in the whole draft. He could be electric. And also, you think about Malik Neighbours and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is not the quarterback he once was. I think a one-off game, I think he could still have a couple of games this year, especially with that connection with Neighbours he could form. I do feel like potentially, this could be one where they could have a really good day here in Soldier Field. Now, Week 11 is reigniting an NFC North rivalry. You travel to Minnesota to take on the Vikings at US Bank Stadium.
I think that might be a loss. That's a tough one on the road. I think McCarthy's settled in by then, and they have a really good defense. So I think that's a tough one. I think we'll lose that. So
Week 12, I've been looking forward to this one the most. Out of all the games this season, this one I'm really looking forward to. Now, again, anyone who knows Luke Wellner from in person or listen to this podcast will know that this guy does not like Aaron Rodgers one bit. So Week 12, they are hosting in Chicago as well, where he does famously own the Bears in that stadium, taking on Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers.
So this is the week that Aaron Rodgers officially hands back the keys. And we absolutely beast them and we win. And we win by about 30 points. There you go.
I love that. I'll get onto my thoughts Steelers more in both our Steelers season preview with our two Freddies or, of course, our season predictions, because I've got a lot of thoughts on the upcoming Steelers season. Now, Week 13 is an interesting one for the... but a friendship you have with another friend of the show who will be on for our Eagles season preview, Steve McGuinness. Now, I know you don't live in the same area anymore, but this is a great one for you two. We had a podcast back in the day called the Hair Dry Treatment. I call it the Hair Dry Treatment Bowl as the Eagles take on the Bears in Lincoln Financial Field. Win, loss, or tie.
Oh, that's a loss. They're still good. I mean, I hate saying it, right, because it means I'm feeding Steve, but we took the mickey out of him when he said they were the best team in football, but actually they kind of are the best team in football. Just don't tell him, right? Don't tell him I said that, because I'll never hear the end of it. But they're pretty good. We lose.
Fair enough. So week 14 is a game against the Green Bay Packers, the first of 2 in 3 weeks. And you'll take on in Week 14 at Lambeau Field.
Oh, now, you know what my heart says here, don't you? My heart is saying, win, win, win. And my head is saying, I think we lose that one at Lambeau because I think it's a hard place to go to win. And I genuinely think it'll be 50-50. We'll win. We will win at home. They'll beat us at Lambeau. And I think that's the way it'll play this year. But my heart wants a win more than anything. But I think the head says it'll be a lose at Lambeau.
Okay, so I'll mark it as a win for Week 16 as well. In between those two games, you are playing at home at Soldier Field against the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, now, again, trap game, isn't it? Because and actually, we don't even know who is going to be under center for the Browns. It could be any one of 4 people. The good thing about the Browns is that they drafted well in terms of getting running backs as well, actually. So they've got looks like they're going to have a really dynamic running back too. This is a tricky one, really, really tricky. I think we win purely because of the QB situation, because I think they will alternate between QBs during the season, because somebody will have a bad game and they'll get benched and someone else will be brought in. And by that point, I'm wondering if Sanders will be the number 1 QB. But we'll wait and see what happens. But I think we win just purely because of that situation. Sorry, Browns fans. Tough one.
So you already mentioned Week 16. Now, a quick fun fact on Week 16. This will be part of a double header on Saturday, December the 20th. So the last Saturday before Christmas, which is going to be 2 games on the same day, both on Fox. So look out for that one. could be quite a good day of NFL action. I always love that time of year. You always get the games on last weekend before Christmas, double headers or triple headers. It's truly the best time of year to be an NFL fan. If you take away the Super Bowl and maybe the later rounds of the playoffs. So your final road game of the regular season is in Week 17, and you're traveling to the home of Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara as you take on the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, no, that is tough because it depends on which version of the 49ers shows up, doesn't it? And this is, I'm sure you agree with me. I actually don't really have a view on how they are going to do this year because they've had so much change. But you can't ignore the fact that the head coach is absolutely amazing. I've got a newfound love for the 49ers, by the way, because the 49ers holdings have just bought Glasgow Rangers. So I'm delighted about that. And I've actually even got a 49ers top, mostly to wind up my friend.
The sacrilege of that. I mean, wearing two teams.
But no, it's interesting. I think that could be a loss, actually, because they are still a good team, even though they're in a little bit of flux at the moment. I still think they're a pretty good team, and it's going to be tough to get a win against them. So it's a loss.
It's really going to be one of two ways, because we had a Niners team make a Super Bowl back in 2019 season, and following season, a lot of injuries happened, and then within a couple of years, they were back in a Super Bowl. And I do feel like with the situation, they've lost a lot of players, more than they did last time. But I think that you still got Purdy there, Kittle, McCaffrey. I mentioned before in our start bench trade episodes with Ollie Kent earlier in the off season. So it's hard one to call with the Niners. Just don't know how they're going to be. Finally, Week 18, they haven't quite decided the date yet. That's obviously one that gets decided just before the game starts. It's a Week 18 game, and you're facing the Detroit Lions at Soldier Field. Luke, for the final time, win, loss, or tie?
Win. Come on. We beat them. It's easy. Come on. It's too easy.
So, in the end, you finish once again with a 10-6 record. So,
come on.
You start off 4-0, then you have a bye, then you lose 3 out of your next 4, then you have 2 wins and 3, then you have 2 losses and 2 wins before winning a loss. So, very up and down season, but that's one that you would hope would get you in the playoffs, at least as a wildcard team. Should that be the case? When you get to the playoffs with a 10-6 record, how far are you going in that postseason?
Oh, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I'll tell you something, actually. So every year, I put on an each way bet for the Bears to win, to get to the Super Bowl, and just in hope more than expectation. I don't think defensively we're quite strong enough to be able to make it all the way through to the Super Bowl. I'd love it to happen, but I still think that we've got a couple of key weaknesses that we need to address. And they always say defenses win championships, and I think that's true in a lot of ways. So I would say, there's a chance we go one and done, to be honest. That's the thing. It could be boom or bust. I would like to think that we would win our first playoff game and then maybe get to the championship, but it's going to be really hard to tell because I just have no idea how we're going to play or how we're going to do. The eternal optimist says we get to the Super Bowl, and I'm busy booking flights, trying to working out how the hell to get there without bankrupting myself. Although I'm totally doing it, by the way, totally. But that's another story. But yeah, let's see what happens.
Absolutely, and I think should be an exciting season for Bears fans, nevertheless. Right, so in our last episode, we got our last guest, who were Charlie and David, to give a question to ask to our next guest, which is, of course, Luke. And Charlie asked the question, he asked the question, and I'll ask it to you, Luke. Who is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL at the moment?
Oh, now that, I love that question. I actually love that question. And Because that's something that really gets you thinking about it. And I think every fan of every team will have a very different viewpoint on it. I actually think Brock Purdy takes a lot of stick. And I think that stems from his draft position, actually, not his skill levels. I think he is seriously underrated because I think he's a great quarterback. And I don't care where he got picked in the draft. He is obviously very, very smart. He plays very, very well. He's obviously responding to coaching. He reads the game well. I think he's the guy that is probably underrated by a lot of fans who quite like sneering about him, but actually he's a good quarterback and you wouldn't be unhappy if he was on your team. So that would be my answer.
I absolutely love that answer because I've been one of Purdy's biggest defenders because they all go on about Mr. Irrelevant. They all go on about how we had a great offensive line, helped by McCaffrey and Kittle. But you think about all the good quarterbacks in the league. All of them have got good offensive lines. All of them have got good receivers. So, I don't think many of the top quarterbacks, maybe except Mahomes, and even he has Kelsey still. He's not blessed with an amazing. They're all just blessed with. You got Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Mahomes. Burrow, maybe the exception because the O-line is pretty bad. You think about Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Matt Stafford, and they all got good receivers. They've all got good running backs. They've all got good most of them good offensive lines. And so I think that narrative is slightly lazy because I think that we've seen at the end of the day we've seen him in multiple playoff games in big moments. Albeit in one season. Two seasons as a first year starting, and then the year they made the Super Bowl. He had big moments, and he made some great important throws. The comeback against the Packers, against the Lions. Purdy's already done more in 2-3 playoff games than a lot of quarterbacks have in their entire career. Justin Herbert, Philip Rivers, Tua, quarterbacks who. Julius Smith has made one playoff game in his entire career, So I think the fact he's gone in, had playoff games. Dak Prescott's only won 2 playoff games, 1 playoff game. That's it. So I think Brock Purdy is, I think for me, same thing as Stroud, same thing as Daniels. If you're already winning big playoff games, some of them against the odds, in your first 2 years starting, I think that's for me is a sign of a good quarterback. So yeah, no. But that is your answer, Brock Purdy. So now, Luke. Your time is to now ask the next question. Now, I wish it was Steve, but it's not Steve, our next team. So, give me a question, NFL or Bears related or NFL related, a question to ask to our next guest.
Okay, my question, you're going to like this one, which is, who is the first head coach to get fired during the season?
Love that.
That's a good one, isn't it?
That's a really good one because a lot of them do get fired on Black Monday when the season ends, but a lot of them do get fired mid-season. So yeah, I've got one in my head, and I want to save it because I may include it in our season predictions come the start of the season. But I may not. You never know. But either way, that is our next question. But that is also the Bears season preview done. So Luke, once again, really good to have you on.
Oh, thanks, man. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been good to talk football. It's been too long, actually, so thanks for having us on board. It's been great fun.
Mate, always a pleasure. Always good to have you on. You've probably got your double hat-trick ball by now in terms of appearances on the show. You've been on here a lot of times, and each time's great. So good to have you on, and looking forward to once again, hopefully seeing you in London for those steak and chips.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get it done. Let's get it locked in for sure.
Absolutely, and yeah, looking forward to that. I don't know whether Steve mentioned that. Steve actually met up with me after the game. I think there was that confusion, wasn't there, about booking the place to watch the game. And I thought you booked it, you thought I booked it. So I did actually see Steve afterwards. So Steve got to, meet a few friends of the show, like Sky Pank and Gary Smith, franchise tag. So yeah, that was good fun. But yeah, in the meantime, this has been our 2025 Chicago Bears season preview. Team 2 out of 32 on our season preview journey. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today, Luke Campbell. And we'll see you guys for our next team season preview. See you there.